The Galactic Council made one mistake. They didn't bomb our cities. They didn't kill our soldiers. They stole the moon. And with that single act of bureaucratic enforcement, they unleashed the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever seen: human grief. In full tactical deployment. His name was Kale Soren. And when he spoke, planets flinched. They called it a legal action. Just a technicality. The moon, they said, had historical ties to a now-dead species, and under Galactic Treaty 417b, it must be returned to its rightful inheritors. The Zydari Mind Swarm filed the paperwork. The Council approved it. A simple vote. Unanimous. Gavel dropped. Law executed. And Earth bled. Without warning, without consent, 2.4 billion humans were force relocated from moon-adjacent territories to holding zones in orbit. Artificial habitats. Crude. Incomplete. Oxygen failed. Systems glitched. Infants gasped in plastic cradles. Parents screamed in pressurized voids. 83 million dead before Earth could finish its morning coffee. By nightfall, the world was silent. Ambassador Kale Soren arrived at the council chamber 12 hours later. Clean-shaven. Calm. Wearing a navy blue suit so precisely tailored, it offended alien aesthetic censors. His eyes said nothing. His file, though, said plenty. Black Ops Trauma Division. Tactical negotiation. Military diplomacy. 2 wars ended by his words. 1 by his stare. The council, bloated and beaming with self-importance, welcomed him like a misbehaving child called to a principal's office. Chancellor Garux of the Phylaxian Tribunal addressed him first, voice gelatinous and smug. Ambassador Soren, we understand this has caused distress. Kale blinked slowly. Distress? Well, yes. Another chortled. Collateral discomfort is inevitable when legal precedent must be enforced. You are, after all, an emotional species. Passionate. Volatile. Kale didn't sit. He placed both hands on the obsidian podium, scanned the rows of glowing faces, floating orbs, gelatin clouds and hovering tanks, insected diplomats clacking in unison. All of them watching him. Expecting a tantrum. A plea. A cry for help. Instead, he said, "Is the moon still within your jurisdiction? Legally? Of course. No appeals? None permitted. No reversals? The council is absolute." Kale nodded once. Then Earth considers this an act of war. A pause. A ripple of discomfort moved across the chamber. Chuckles. Mockery. War? Garux wheezed, nearly splitting his throat sac. You believe Earth is in any position to make threats? Kale leaned closer. It's not a threat. It's a diagnosis. Your planet lacks the infrastructure for prolonged interstellar engagement. Your species isn't emotionally stable enough for integrated warfare. Your people scream when you grieve. You riot when you're afraid. You cry when you're angry. Kale's lips barely moved. Yes. That's why you should be terrified. More laughter. A few members clapped appendages. One spat a glowing egg in approval. Kale straightened. His voice sharpened, iron behind silk. You think we've come unprepared. You assume this moment caught us by surprise. You assume we'll march out banners and point crude metal. That we'll yell. Rage. Beg. That we'll fight you with tooth and claw. He turned. His gaze scanned each sector of the amphitheater. You've studied our wars. Our weapons. Our psychology. But you never studied our grief. No laughter now. You see, we don't fight like you do. We don't erase to win. We remember. Every atrocity you've seen in our archives, do you think we regret them? We built ourselves on the bones of every failure. We mourn, and then we perfect. A siren pulsed once through the council hall. A quiet chime from the emergency net. Systemic neural disruption detected. Telepathic chatter began to crackle. One delegate blinked rapidly and slumped in their pod. Kale checked his watch. It begins now, he said. What did you do? Hissed the delegate from the Inari swarm cluster. I executed protocol catharsis, Kale answered. An empathy-based mimetic trigger encoded in the sublayers of your interspecies communications net. You downloaded our sorrow 6 years ago when you approved Earth's membership. All you ever needed was the key. Another siren. A delegate screamed. You embedded a psychological virus into our diplomacy infrastructure? Shouted a gelatin entity that was actively dissolving. No. I embedded humanity into it. You connected to us. You invited us in. And now, you'll feel what it means to be one of us. You'll feel the breath leave your child's lungs in the middle of an orbital drop. You'll feel what it's like to bury your family under a red sky. You'll wake every cycle with survivor's guilt so heavy, your atmosphere will buckle. A shriek echoed from the aquatic chamber. One of the water-based species thrashed violently before falling still. A ripple of psionic backlash washed across the chamber. Lights dimmed. Translation streams failed. 2 species fainted on the spot. Kale walked down the center aisle, toward the exit, voice even as stone. This isn't a weapon. This is who we are. You took our moon. You killed our people. You called it law. You called it process. So now we are giving you what you never had, consequence. As he reached the exit, he paused. Turned. In 3 days, entire civilizations will shut down from emotional paralysis. Empathic species will break under guilt. Logicians will spiral into recursive trauma loops. You will all beg for numbness. But you won't find it. Someone tried to stand. Failed. Another tried to speak, but only blood foamed from his gills. Kale adjusted his cufflinks. You can't fight this. You can't legislate it away. You can't shoot at it. This is not vengeance. This is emotional synchronization. This is the price of dehumanizing us. A final siren rang. Then silence. Kale smiled. Not out of satisfaction. Not revenge. Something colder. Understanding. Next time, he said, stepping into the transport chamber. Take our calls. Kale stood in the communications vault beneath Earth Command's core, fingers hovering over a screen labeled Catharsis. No lights, no fanfare, just a blinking cursor and a 10-digit code. He paused once, just to breathe. You sure? Said Commander Riva from behind the glass. Once this is out, there's no walking it back. I'm not walking anywhere, Kale replied. I'm holding the line they crossed. His fingers moved. The code entered. The program spread. Across the galactic net, it began as a whisper. An untraceable data pulse wormed into every system the Council had ever touched. Translation streams. Cultural exchange archives. Judicial AI cores. Nothing exploded. No alarms. No grand spectacle. But within seconds, the first counselor collapsed. A Plaxan delegate, old and considered emotionally immune, dropped to his knees mid-sentence, clutching his chest. His eyes dilated. His voice broke. He spoke the words. I am not ready to die. In perfect Earth standard, despite never learning it. Council sensors flagged a level 0 anomaly. No source. No malware. No breach. Just pain. Global. Simultaneous. Everywhere. Kale watched the readouts light up in rows. Species by species. Mind by mind. Billions linked into the empathic net began to drown in foreign sorrow. A flood of memory not their own. But it was designed to feel personal. This is insane, Riva whispered. We're hitting them with feelings? No, Kale said. We're showing them truth. Without a filter. Without pity. Let's see how the galaxy handles what we live with every day. He tapped to authorize Phase 2. Let it in. At the Galactic Council chamber, the chairman of the Core Sun's convocation screamed. Not in pain, but in recognition. He saw the burnt skin of a boy holding his dead sister during the daylight bombings. He remembered being that boy, though it never happened. He saw the mother on a lifeboat punching through glass trying to reach her son as the Atlantic arcologies fell. He wept. Not as an alien. As a parent. Species who prided themselves on intellectual detachment buckled. The Lyrics, once hosts of a logical empire, closed trade routes within the hour. Their AI minds couldn't process human loss without recursive feedback. Entire planets disconnected themselves to stop the images. But it was too late. Inari broadcasters attempted to override the feed. Their anchors began sobbing on live streams. One slit his own throat on camera. Viewers experienced his pain in real time through the shared neural net. The council issued a code black. Kale's voice reached them all. You called us unstable. You said we weren't ready? You watched us suffer for decades and called it growth. You pushed your laws into our homes and stole our moon under the lie of precedent. So now, you'll feel what we feel. He didn't shout. He didn't smile. Just delivered every word like a scalpel cutting into a wound already rotting. We buried our pain. Carved it into monuments. You turned it into a footnote. So we turned it into a mirror. At the Martian relay, diplomatic systems began to loop. The Core Council AI failed to compute the patterns of collective grief. It flagged the experience as hostile but could not identify a weapon. That was the brilliance of it. There was no bomb. No blast. No military. Just grief, pure and raw, mapped in perfect clarity to alien minds never designed to process it. This isn't vengeance, Kale said to the camera. It's comprehension. For the first time you know us. He stepped away from the feed and gave the signal to shut it down. Not because it was over, but because it no longer needed his voice. By the next hour, 17 independent systems declared neutrality. 9 spiritual factions collapsed. 2 entire empires went into cultural lockdown, their leaders silenced by emotional overload. Civil unrest exploded across 4 sectors as alien populations demanded to know why they had never been warned about humanity. A Zydari node tried to reverse the signal. Their dataform shattered under the memory of a child being cradled after an orbital strike. The code translated too well. They screamed, "You made it so we couldn't tell it was a memory." Kale responded, "Because for us, it never stopped being real. Earth's ships never launched. Earth's weapons never fired. Yet the galaxy trembled." On the council floor, Kale reappeared days later, wearing black gloves and a plain coat. Not as a diplomat, but as a witness. The chamber was half empty. Delegates slumped in seats. No laughter. No posturing. "You don't understand," a Phyraxian hissed. "You've infected the soul stream. We're feeling humans every time we speak your name." Kale's tone never rose. "Then don't speak it," the Zydari envoy wheezed. "You've broken the net. Do you understand what that means?" "I do," Kale said. "It means now you have to rebuild it yourselves. With consent." He walked toward the center of the chamber and looked up. "We didn't ask for war. We asked for justice. You denied both. So we gave you perspective. You could have used force," another counselor said, dazed. "You chose madness." "No," Kale corrected. "We chose clarity." Silence. And then a whisper, trembling and low, from a member of the Vensari. "Is this how you live?" Kale didn't answer. He didn't need to. The council fired first. Not weapons, legislation. Sanctions. Quarantine zones. Isolation measures framed as protection for vulnerable minds. Earth's diplomats were blacklisted, its broadcasts censored, its people declared emotionally hazardous. But they still didn't understand what they had triggered. They believed they could outmaneuver grief the way they did economics and war. Kale anticipated their counterplay. He waited 2 days, gave them room to respond with decency. They chose arrogance. That was the mistake. He summoned the Valkyrie contingent. 12 human operatives, trained not with guns but with language, irony, presence. Combat diplomats. They wore suits as sharp as their smiles. Each carried no weapons, just a phrasebook, a psychological profiling implant, and Earth's history burned into their memories. They were taught to speak softly and collapse empires. Kale addressed them once before they deployed. Do not raise your voice. Do not break a law. Do not start a war. Just walk into the heart of their systems and remind them what it feels like to be seen by us. The first target was the Zenith Tribunal, a species of crystalline logic beings who believed they were immune to pain. Agent Lena met them in open court, offered them a single sentence. We feel everything you've chosen to ignore. The sentence carried data. Subtext. Memory. A scream hidden in the syntax. Half the tribunal collapsed. Their judges declared a mistrial. Their network of infallible logic fragmented into emotional recursion loops. The second strike was on the Sonari kinship, a hive mind archive species, known for collective detachment. Agent Morvan uploaded a package labeled Human Family Dinner, 2131. The entire kinship ceased activity for 6 hours after interpreting the emotions of a mother hugging her son goodbye before frontline deployment. They disconnected from Galactic net access. Permanently. Every act was silent. No casualties. Just emotional collapse. The universe began to grasp that humanity didn't fight like the rest. Council members panicked. They called it psychic terrorism. They labeled Kale an existential threat. They accused Earth of violating every rule of warfare. Kale responded with a recorded address to the entire galactic network. You call this an attack? But all we've done is allow you to experience us. Not through filters. Not through laws. Raw. Real. Every feeling you said made us primitive, now you understand its depth. You think we're using pain. No. We're using recognition. The next wave was untraceable. Not from operatives, not from Earth. The virus had adapted. Refugee colonies across the Orion Fringe reported spontaneous emotional outbreaks. Entire alien families began dreaming in human memories. Children of the Arik, a species known for logical silence, began drawing scenes of Earth's wars and writing poetry in broken English. The grief contagion had become self-replicating. Kale didn't celebrate. He just sat in silence as report after report arrived. The Lorgai ambassador has gone quiet. The Vexori Queen wept during a council vote. The Rinder armadas refused to fire on Earth-aligned vessels. Said they felt wrong. It wasn't victory. It was consequence. When the council finally summoned Kale for another hearing, he arrived alone. No guards. No entourage. Just a black datapad in one hand. They tried to accuse him. The High Arbiter from the Corps demanded answers. What do you want from us? He said, voice trembling. Kale stepped forward. You asked if we were ready for the stars. We are. But you were never ready for us. You wanted our minerals. Our music. Our sweat. But not our grief. Not our fire. Not our memory. You used our suffering like a stage play, something to study from a distance. Now you're living inside it. You're destabilizing the galactic order. No, Kale replied. We're revealing it was never stable to begin with. You just silenced anyone who said otherwise. The Arbiter rose. You've weaponized empathy. That's monstrous. Kale leaned forward, expression unchanging. You made it a weakness. We made it a force. What does that make you? Silence followed. Then a quiet voice from the back, one of the smaller delegates, a trembling aquatic from a pacifist world. We feel shame. We never did before. Kale turned to them. Then there's hope for you. The session ended without a vote. Most couldn't speak. Some couldn't move. Kale left them that way, not as a threat, but as a gift. Back on Earth, Kale entered the underground hall where a silent command staff monitored the emotional contagion's progress. The projections weren't tactical charts anymore. They were emotional maps, live readings of empathy spikes, cultural shifts, species-wide introspections. Riva looked up as he entered. You know you just changed everything. He nodded. They'll either grow from it, he said, or they'll try to erase it. She studied him a moment. And if they erase it? Kale exhaled. Then they'll learn what rage looks like after grief runs out. Kale stood at the edge of the conference floor, not as a diplomat now, but as a final act waiting to unfold. Around him, the chamber dimmed under emergency power, the once proud amphitheater reduced to a ruin of silence and trembling delegates. The council, or what remained of it, clung to the last fragments of authority. He didn't look at them like enemies anymore. He looked at them like patients who refused treatment. "We didn't come to conquer," Kale said evenly. "We came to participate. You locked us out of real power. You gave us ceremonial titles and expected us to play nice while you dissected everything human behind closed doors. You thought understanding would soften us. You never considered that we might turn it into precision." The court chair, a calcified insect with 13 decades of legislative service, pressed his palms to the table. "This is emotional blackmail. You've infected the council. You're forcing moral submission with psychological tactics." "We didn't force anything," Kale cut in. "We opened the door. You walked through it. And now you can't breathe the air." A Vensari delegate raised one limb, barely steady. "There are children in my colony who cry for mothers they've never met. They mourn events that never occurred in our timeline. Do you call that diplomacy?" Kale stepped forward. "No. I call that consequence. For decades, you mined Earth's culture for art, food, music, anything palatable. But you filtered out the grief that made it real. You sterilized our history for entertainment and expected us to be grateful. So we returned the favor, unfiltered." The air changed. Not physically, but atmospherically. Something was coming, and the council felt it. A presence. A shift in weight none of them understood yet. Kale tapped a key on the pad strapped to his wrist. The feed behind him blinked to life, images, live streams, raw data from across the galaxy. It wasn't death. It wasn't war. It was stillness. Entire fleets stalled mid-space. Civilian networks paused broadcasting. Galactic economies froze, not from fear, but paralysis. Grief had permeated the nervous system of the galaxy. Not as sabotage. As immersion. And now, the core trigger. "You thought this was the campaign," Kale said quietly. "It was the preparation." The moon hadn't been lost. It had been repurposed decades prior, its crust seeded with emotional telemetry nodes. The moment the Zydari took it, the system activated, legally, under council law. A passive surveillance array transformed into a full-spectrum empathy amplifier. Earth had let the theft happen. "Protocol Threnody was embedded in the moon's core," Kale said. "It was never a satellite. It was a mirror. No species would turn their own trauma into a weapon," the Arbiter snapped. Kale faced him. "You misunderstand. It's not a weapon. It's a signal. You wanted proof we didn't belong. So we gave you a reflection." The feeds sharpened. One by one, alien systems lit up with synchronized neural patterns. Shared hallucinations. Cultural echoes. Ghosts of Earth's history adapted to fit the minds of the recipients. A Rylothian singer fell silent mid-performance, overwhelmed by a song her species had no words for. A Drenari war priest collapsed at his altar, reciting lines from a human poem written in 2054. None of them had heard these things before. All of them believed they had lived them. A comms technician whispered into the council's emergency frequency. "They're dreaming human." Kale looked to the delegates who had mocked him weeks ago. Now they couldn't speak. Not from pride. From overload. "You took a piece of our world," he said. "So we embedded our story into it. Now the whole galaxy carries our scars." One delegate tried to protest, but his voice broke halfway through. Another simply covered her face. "You said we were too emotional to sit among you," Kale continued. "Now you sit in silence because you felt what we buried just to be here." The Zydari representative, what remained of her projection, blinked slowly, her voice crackling. "We didn't know it would spread like this." "That's the point," Kale said. "You never ask what we've lived through. You just expect us to behave." A long pause followed. Then one word, from a species that had never spoken aloud in over 500 years. "Please." Kale lowered his hand. The feeds faded. The images vanished. The council chamber fell into a quiet deeper than silence. "This isn't a siege," he said. "This was your education. If you choose to purge it, you'll be exactly who we knew you were. But if you keep it, if you carry it, you might just become something worth belonging to." He turned away, but a voice stopped him. Garruk's, once smug, now ragged. "What happens if we reject this?" Kale didn't stop walking. "Then we will remember you the way we remember the plague, the tyrant, the executioner, by what you chose not to feel." He reached the threshold. Behind him, nobody moved. Not out of fear, but because they finally understood what it meant to be human. Kale stood in the shadow of Earth's lunar reclamation tower, the original council crest still etched in broken stone behind him, untouched since the day humanity was removed from the Alliance rolls. The transmission beam above him hummed with idle power, waiting. The galaxy was quiet now. Not peaceful, just listening. He activated the link. Every connected system, every diplomatic node, every council frequency across 5 galactic arms lit up. One more message. No preamble. No music. No framing. Just Kale, alone, speaking. "You felt it. I know. We've seen the quiet. Your fleets no longer patrol. Your markets no longer sing. Your entertainment streams have slowed. You are not broken. You are reflecting. That's the difference." He took a breath, not for effect, but because the air still mattered. "You once feared humanity because we were unpredictable. Loud. Primal. You called it a flaw. Then you feared us because you felt our grief and couldn't forget it. You called that an attack. It wasn't. We never sent soldiers. We never fired a weapon. We didn't destroy a single planet. But something in you cracked. Something that should have broken long ago." He paused. The signal held. No interference. "You stole from us because you believed we wouldn't understand how to respond within the rules. You counted on chaos. You expected retaliation you could classify and condemn. You built your safety on the assumption that we were too disorganized to unify." He smiled slightly. "That was your final error." He let the word settle. "We are not here to rule. We will not rebuild your council. We will not replace your laws. What we've done cannot be undone. You've absorbed it now. Our memories, our sorrow, our resilience. It has shaped you in ways that no decree ever could." He leaned in, not closer, just heavier with truth. "I did not come here to ask for forgiveness. This was never about justice. This was about comprehension. You governed the stars like they belonged to you. We showed you that they belonged to everyone. Especially the wounded. Especially the ones who build beauty from ash." Behind him, the transmission pulsed once, confirmation of full galactic saturation. The message had reached even the unregistered systems, the pirate rings, the fringe planets left to rot after council failures. Every living species that touched the galactic net heard him now. Kale's voice dropped, just enough. "There will be no new council. There will be no restoration. What comes next is your choice. Carry what you felt. Or run from it. But understand this, the old order is dead. And we will not mourn it." He stepped back. The broadcast continued, his voice now a recorded echo across the interstellar grid. In the silence that followed, Kale walked past the beam, through the long corridor beneath the tower. The moon wasn't guarded. It didn't need to be. No one had tried to reclaim it. Not after they learned what it carried. Riva met him near the docking ring. She had aged, or perhaps just learned how to stand quieter. Her datepad buzzed. "They want to meet," she said. "Not all of them. Just the ones still talking. 27 species. They've asked if Earth will help them rebuild." Kale didn't look surprised. "They understand what that means. They think they do. They don't?" "No," she admitted. "But they're asking." He stared at the pad. Not in judgment. In calculation. "We'll send observers. No promises." Riva nodded. Protocol catharsis is still active. Should we deactivate it? Kale shook his head. No. Let it live. It could destabilize more governments. He didn't blink. Then they were never stable. She looked away, unsure whether to agree or leave it alone. Where will you go? She asked. Nowhere. For the first time in a long time, I don't need to. She hesitated. Do you regret it? He considered the question carefully. I regret that it had to happen. Not that it did. There was a moment between them, unspoken understanding that things were better, and also irreparably different. Outside the tower, 2 ships descended, unmarked, silent, painted in neutral colors. Not warcraft. Not emissary vessels. Observation crews. From worlds that had refused to speak to Earth 6 months ago. They're arriving, Riva said. I see them. Want me to handle it? No. I'll go. Alone? He gave her a faint grin. That's how I started. Kale walked toward the docking platform as the hatch opened. The first figure that stepped out wasn't armed. No translator mesh, no ceremonial robe. Just a child, no older than 9 in human years, clutching a tablet too large for her. She looked up at Kale. Her voice was unsure but sincere. My father made me watch the stories. From Earth. The ones that made us cry. I didn't understand them. Then I dreamed about a girl holding her brother's hand under falling fire. I woke up, and I understood everything. Kale crouched to her level. That was a hard dream. She nodded. But it was real. He didn't correct her. The child held out the tablet. I wrote something. It's not a law or a treaty. Just a story. Kale accepted it. We'll read it. She smiled. Together? Together. Behind them, the diplomats waited. Their empires shaken, their systems rattled, but something had opened. Not fear. Not debt. A chance. Kale looked at them, then back to the child. We never wanted control, he said. We just wanted to be understood. And finally they were.